Coming up, in 1984, two brothers found themselves at a real crossroads. Their band, which had had a bit of success on one side of the ocean, broke up, coming short of the goals they'd set to make it in the States. They were ready to quit the business altogether, but a year later, they formed a new band, and they dug down deep to create their debut album. They knew they had something really special, but when the first three singles completely flopped, none of them fell to chart, they thought it was over. But then a funny thing happened. Their record label put out a fourth single, not usually something that happens when the first three fell, and it scorched the charts, becoming one of the biggest songs in 1987, with a message so unifying, so endearing. Many legends have said it's the one song they wish they'd written. Coming up next, the singer and the writer of the song tells me the story of this classic hit that has a shocking double meaning that he'll tell you about, and he made this band arguably the greatest two-hit wonder of the 80s in America. Well, at least. Coming up. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you love music, you are going to want to subscribe below right now to be a part of a community where you're going to get daily content celebrating the rock era, the stories of the songs straight from the legends. For more behind-the-scenes footage, you can check us out on Patreon. That helps us keep it a daily channel. It's time for another edition of our series, #1 in Our Hearts. This is one of my favorite shows we do on here, and this week we have one of my favorite songs ever. We're going to honor it as an all-time modern standard. It did go all the way to #2. It's simply one of the greatest songs of the 80s, a song that still moves us today, and I'm sure is going to continue to flourish centuries from now. When the Australian group Split Enz broke up, brother Tim and Neil Finn went their separate ways. Neil and drummer Paul Hester decided to form a new group. As they continued looking, bass player Nick Seymour came up to Neil Finn at a party for the Melbourne live concert of Split Enz farewell show. And I guess he requested a proper tryout. At first, they called themselves the Mullanes, and they brought on guitarist Craig Hooper, formerly of the Reels. When they signed to Capitol Records, the band was actually forced to change their band name several times. They went from the Mullanes to the Largest Living Things, and they finally settled on Crowded House. This is after they flew to LA to record the album, and they were all living in a very cramped apartment. That's where that came from. Very cool. Crowded House, the self-titled debut album, that came out in the late summer of 1986. Very high hopes behind it. However, the first single, Mean to Me, that failed to make any headway outside of Australia. And then the second single came and went, World Where You Live. And there was the third single, Now We're Getting Somewhere, that also failed to chart. After 3 straight stiffs, the album looked like it was pretty much done. And then the band released the song that they knew in their hearts had the ability to change everything for them, including the way that we as listeners look at the world. Don't Dream It's Over was a revelation. It moved up the charts, and it took the band as close as one can get to the top of the summit, the #2 spot. It was right behind I Knew You Were Waiting for Me by Aretha Franklin and George Michael. Now, it may not have hit #1, and you have to remember this is in '87. It was certainly a very competitive time on the charts. But a great song breaks through to every decade, every generation. Don't Dream It's Over, it's done that. Did it first in 1987 when it looked as if Crowded House might face foreclosure. Sorry, I had to. It's a serious message that made people reassess their lives, and the music video was equally moving. Pushed them to release a 5th single after that, the Beatles' Something So Strong, that hit the top 10, and it pushed the album to platinum status. I was extremely fortunate to sit down with one of my favorites, singer-songwriter Neil Finn. I was able to talk to him about many of these songs, including Don't Dream It's Over. It was really a dream come true in many ways, as I've always been mesmerized by his work. Here is Neil Finn with a compelling story of a no doubt about it classic song. I want to really go into a lot of detail on Don't Dream It's Over. Number 1 in New Zealand, Canada, number 2 in the US. I read that you wrote it on your brother's piano.
Mm-hmm. I was over at Tim's place because it's useful to have a place to go anyway, that's isolated. He wasn't there at the time, he was away, so I was going over there, but Paul Hester was living there at the time, I think. And he was in, quite social mode, and so there was people coming over to visit him, and I was shut away in the piano room, and I think that was the origin of the line, when the world comes and they come to build a wall. I wasn't that I was saying that these people were the world. When the world comes in, they come. You just get little funny triggers for lines that come along. It had a certain melancholy aspect to the day, and I just remember writing it in a different key as it turned out to how it turned out on the record. Mitchell Froome suggested that E flat was a sadder key, and it was an E originally. So E flat's a richer key, I think he said, and I agreed with him. It also made it slightly easier for me to sing because it was really painfully high when I first. But yeah, I went home shortly afterwards and actually did a demo, which is on the reissues on the bonus discs, and I don't think anybody's heard before. I don't know, maybe they have, but it probably hasn't emerged up till now. And it's a really nice demo. I'm quite proud of it. And I made it with a matchbox as my snare drum and a tapping the tabletop as my bass drum and just a couple of guitars. I translated it to guitar. And actually, one thing that I will show you, because you asked for, is that there is at the heart of it is what we would affectionately term the Māori strum in New Zealand, which is a tendency for, Māoris love to sing, and New Zealanders love to sing at parties, but in order to provide more than just a simple guitar strum, they add a big backbeat, and so there's a and that's what the demo is like, when I had just that and a matchbox snare drum.
There is freedom within, there is freedom without.
You were kind of feeling a little bit lost, but while on the other hand, you're kind of sort of urging yourself on as you were writing it.
Yeah.
I remember reading
Well,
that.
I think the words all came in one go.
Kind of fell out.
They did fall out, yeah. And it had a certain, I didn't realize it had a kind of an R&B feeling to it, or a slightly soul leaning, which I wouldn't have recognized at the time, and I grew up in a very pop world and a very pop aesthetic. In fact, the first time Crowded House tried to play that song at rehearsal, it sounded terrible. We couldn't really find the right feel.
Yeah, that's what I remember reading that, and Mitchell really.
Well, he helped to get the arrangement together. The demo definitely had a good vibe, but we couldn't seem to muster up the right. We're just coming at it from the wrong angle. As soon as he suggested putting an R&B kind of, it's not overtly so, but it's definitely got the bass line
and the organ
and
too.
the organ and that. Yeah, just put it in a different place, which really suited it. So
I remember when I heard the song that back in the day, without having the lyrics, you listen to it and write them down. You push play on the cassette tape, rewind it a little bit. That's how to know exactly what the lyrics were. But try to catch the deluge in a paper cup. I remember I looked up the word deluge because I was like, "What is that?"
That was a little homage to John Lennon, really. I mean, I was aware at the time, when I wrote about anything, anybody who mentions paper cup in a song, you've got to take that one on board. He was there first.
Flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. Try to catch the deluge in a paper cup.
Well, the chorus, "Don't dream it's over." What were you talking about there?
We always considered there was a double meaning there, which, it's either don't dream, it's over, or don't dream, it's over. It's a subtle difference, but there is a possibility of two meanings in there. And not letting people build walls. Which has a strange echo in modern times.
Isn't it just interesting how you write a song in 1986 and 30 years later it means as much as it ever has?
I think the lyrics in that one are kind of nicely open enough for people to find their own little doorways. And I'm not a guy who pores over the lyric sheet. And, for that reason, although I have huge admiration and respect for Dylan, he wasn't my favorite artist of the time, because it felt like in order to appreciate some of his music anyway, you really had to buy into following the thread and the narrative.
John is in the basement mixing up the medicine. I'm on the pavement thinking about the government.
I just like to drift away and dream away with music, and so a few lines will hit me, and that there's like, they set you off on some thought process. And in fact, on occasions, I've misunderstood songs completely, and people have explained them to me later, and I go, I'm slightly disappointed now.
Hear that. Yeah.
So I hope that happens with my songs, you know.
Well, the lines that I always loved, my possessions are causing me suspicions, but there's no proof. I mean, wow. And then in the paper today tells a warrant of waste, but you turn right over to the TV page. I mean, that was always kind of a reminder to me, as I hear it even now, that I need to realize that there are more important things. This is kind of cool.
Well, we were distracted as a species back then, or the affluent part of the world was anyway, and I think we're even more distracted now.
When you go into that last chorus, I mean, there's so much power there. When you were recording it, because the vocal is just so passionate.
When I listen to the songs from those days, I think I'm singing better now, personally.
Yeah.
I used to really push my voice, you know, into a quite strong, emotive place, which maybe it's part of the reason people like the song, I don't know, but it almost sounds a little oversung to me now. But
really?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah, the original version. I'm always surprised at how strident it is, you know. But so I think it just put a little bit of extra poignancy into the session that day, and you can hear it in the track.
The special effects were so cutting edge at that time, with the plates breaking, and
yeah, they probably stand up pretty well now.
Yeah, it does. I was just watching it the other day and remembering as a kid watching it with each room that you go into and the things that were being written as the video was moving on.
Yeah, well, there was a real collaborative work, that one. We sat down with Alex, and we only pulled it together in about 10 days or something, and the idea, he had come up to us with a lot of the ideas for using that collage technique, and we discussed the idea of moving between rooms, and we gave him a lot of details of real places that we remembered from our childhood. And he made, you know, they built this beautiful sets, and it's a very successful video.
My possessions are causing me suspicion, but there's no proof.
Remember when it was used on Miami Vice? That was one of my favorite shows as a kid. And
right.
Adventureland, 90210, all these American shows that they've used it on. But the covers, Paul Young did a cover for it.
It was probably the first came off the rank for covers, I think.
Now I'm towing my car. There's a hole in the roof.
There's a jazz band from New York who've done a really quite a strange jazz version of it.
Don't dream it's over, hey now, hey now.
Miley Cyrus and Ariana Grande, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Grande? That's good, I'm cleared that one up. But they did, I really liked it. I didn't know what to expect when people told me they'd done a version, but I thought it was a really nice, they sang it really well.
They come, to build a wall between us.
To the beat of a drum, and I'm counting the steps to the door of your heart.
It's kind of that song for you guys that just every day has got a new life somewhere.
Liberation and relief.
People ask me which versions I like the best, and I always refuse to answer that, or even comment on individual versions, because I sort of think, well, it's just great for the song.
And it means something to them. That's why they chose
you
to...
don't want to be judging people's efforts. There are some that seem more successful than others. It's kind of nice to see your songs get covered.
It just feels like it's a timeless song for me and for a lot of fans. It just seems like it could have been released in any decade.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's certain aspects of the original recording that are very tied to the 80s, the drum sound in particular. But I do agree with you, because I think I've done the song in lots of different ways now with strings and just acoustic versions.
I'm walking again to the beat of the drum.
A tinge of melancholy. It's a very, it's a universal thread, not abandoning your hopes and dreams for the future, and not giving up.
Don't ever let them win.
Thank you so much for watching. Leave us a comment about this classic song and about Neil Finn and Crowded House and your experience with this song, the first time you heard it, what you felt. To get Neil's music and merch, click on our Amazon links below. If you like our content, subscribe below, be a part of this community. Help us curate more stories behind songs by clicking on our Patreon link below. And please take a moment now to get a glimpse into Neil's charity, So They Can, of which he is an ambassador.
Well, I was introduced to Cass and to the idea, and it was in some ways an impossible dream at the time, but it was an achievable dream as well.
When I first went to the rubbish dump, these kids, there was about 1,000 people living there, and many of them are orphaned from the violence or from HIV/AIDS. They live there alone, trying to survive.
It wasn't trying to fix the whole world, because it's impossible for one person, but it was trying to do extraordinary things for a small group of people, which can then fan out and do extraordinary things for a larger community.
Oh, yeah.
If you create space for people and you create resources for people, then they go and do amazing things for themselves. It's some kind of empowering process that's happening for these kids in the school, and now it's expanded to training colleges and women's projects.
We know that we're not going to change the world in my lifetime, hopefully maybe the generation after, but we can make a big difference on the individuals that we work with.
It's so wonderful to see small successes. The results have been phenomenal. That's what it's about. Just something that you can see on a human level, because it's not so big, but it's big in terms of its heart and its ideas. And so, yeah, I'm really delighted to be able to help them.
People can take action. It's easy to go to sotheycan.org, and I saw how to help. I mean, sponsor letters, you can sponsor a child, you can donate, you can buy some of the things, jewelry and some of the things that they make, and volunteer. There's a lot of different things that people can do to get involved.
Yeah, I would recommend anyone to support it.
Something so strong after Don't Dream It's Over that brought me to the album. That was the track that stood out to me that I listened to, because it was just such a catchy, Beatles-esque melody, just feel-good song. Tell me about that one, about putting that one together.
That started its life as a kind of a folky, kind of strummy, dreamy thing, and a quite different melody in the chorus. And there again, it was kind of a transitional zone where, the bulk of the song was there, intact, but very different feeling, and Mitchell suggested taking that in a more R&B kind of way as well, especially with the bass line. And encouraged me to think about the melody in a slightly different way as well. Yeah, that had quite a big journey attached to it. I guess in its own way, it sounds incredibly upbeat and positive, but it has a sting in its tail from a lyrical point of view too. I've seen you fall into the same trap. But I'm kind of, like I say, I'm usually just finding lines that seem to have some emotional power and string them together in a way that seems to have integrity, and I'm happy to have a few things that are not explained and leave people to it.
I always read that it started out kind of as a slower song, a ballad almost.
Yeah, the first demo I made was really just dreamy, strummy kind of thing, and then by the second one was a little more upbeat, but the melody it did some acrobatic stuff in the chorus. For some reason, well, actually, when you work with a producer who's prepared to get involved in your songs, it's confronting to some degree to find that they'll relate to some things that you do, and other things that kind of go, oh, that doesn't work, and you go, well, I like it. But then you have to and you look at it from a different angle, and you go, well, maybe I'll take his word for it just for now, and I'll see where we go, and you end up being delighted with by letting somebody in, I think you create more depth in your work.
Mitchell was a co-write credit on that.
He did. Yeah, he really contributed to that by suggesting chord variations in the chorus. Yeah, I've just got a Tascam 4-track tape recorder, which is the first time I was able to do overdubs, and it really changed my whole approach to songwriting. I used to write by making demos, and you'd sort of have a half-baked idea, and you'd make 2 or 3 demos of it, and in the course of searching for having an atmosphere, it would lead you on, and it just gave me another angle for writing, rather than just sitting with a guitar and piano, which still is a very valid way to do it. But I think these days it's the way that people make songs is by making records a lot more as well. Like they're making the record as they're writing the song. And that's what I started to do when I got a multi-track recorder. And I've done that in the same way ever since.
Hey, thanks for watching. Leave us a comment about this classic song and about Neil Finn and Crowded House. What are your favorite songs by this band, and what did you think of when you first heard this life-affirming song? Let us know below. Let's have a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. Help us curate more stories behind songs and artists by clicking on our Patreon link below as well. Right now, I hope you'll take a moment to get a glimpse into Neil Finn's charity, So They Can, of which he is an ambassador of. So They Can is a not-for-profit organization committed to empowering children living in poverty through education, and please donate if you can. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.